So what I wanted to share with you, again, really first, thank you, because each time it's a conversation. And it's really, you know, the calls I have with you every week, but also your emails after each meeting give me information. So these slides are really a follow-up of our conversation, of what you want to hear. So if there's anything specific that you want to hear, let me know. I've discussed with one of you, one of the persons on the call, one of the options for next week, to take it a little bit of a different format. And the idea would be to maybe interview 3 people that have been and entrepreneurs and in the corporate world. So because they've been in different situations, that they can share their point of view. So first I realized we've done 2 series. So this one is our number 7 Wednesday, or 7th Wednesday. So I'm very happy that we've continued and that this information is useful. However, what I've realized is that I've given you a lot of information and I've given you a lot of advice. And I thought, you know, it might be a bit overwhelming and it might be a bit daunting and challenging because there's all new activity, you know, it seems that there's going to be a lot of information. So what I thought for today is to discuss about the flow and how to stay in the zone, and we're going to dive into accountability, because the idea is that not me, you know, throwing information and yet you feeling overwhelmed with where do I start and how do I go about it. And I know that at the end of the day, you know, you might have a strong why and you might have a strong internal drive, but you know, life happens, kids, work, we can get very easily distracted from our goals. And I think in my case, if I'm transparent, I can say that I don't even need external excuses, because I make my own excuses, which usually are either, you know, a variation of I'm not quite ready, my hair doesn't look good, or the stars are not aligned, which is, you know, when Mercury is retrograde, that is like me saying, okay, I can't do anything right now because Mercury's retrograde and whatever. So it's me giving my own self excuses. So what I want to tell you is that I've discovered a little bit in the digging of the accountability, that it actually validates the whole collective that we created. And it actually proves the benefit of the collective. And I'm going to go into the slides. So what I did is, when we started the collective, it was really to create a container for your conversation offlines, right? And to focus on, in smaller groups, on specific subject or a specific, the designers and the people who wanted to pivot career. So at last week was the first week of our collectives. And I was actually blown away in 1 week, because you came up with a resource guide, a one-pager sharing, you know, how to put together one-pager, but trust and everything. So I can't even imagine what in a few months of the collective, what we can come up to. And what I'm going to share in the slides are not my original thoughts, right? It's all information that I came across by exploring the subject and trying to understand and make it sense at a deep level of what makes people successful. And I don't want to say successful, just fortunate or happy in their positions, in their career. So how you get your fullest expression, where you really, you know, in your flow. And I focus on career because, you know, I'm a recruiter, but that's all the things you're going to see in the slides are completely applicable to your health, your cooking skills, whatever rocks your boat, you know, you can apply them to anything. And so this research really shows that accountability and very solid networks are key to success. So that's what we just did. You know, we're creating a community and a space for all together. So I'm going to share my slides. Share screen. Okay. And Charlotte, can you allow me to share my screen? Because I know you're the host now.
Yes.
permission, please.
One sec.
And one of you, I think, Kimberly, I don't know if you're on the call, but gave me the tip to put my camera higher so we didn't see my chin. So I think it's better. And I put also a lamp behind my computer as suggested. So thank you. So thank you for the tips of camera and thing. Okay. Okay, Charlotte, can I get the host, or if not, I'll just give
Yeah, I will. I'm not quite sure why it's not letting you.
Okay, just you can pass me on the host, and we can send the slides after. Okay, so screen share, and here it is. So the title of today is all about bringing diversity to your network. So this is the quote. We start with the quote. It's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this is very interesting for the networking. So I'm going to share with you this book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And I put the gentleman's name because it was written, it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Okay. So it's an old book that was kind of a self-help book in the 90s or something like that. And he talks all about flow and flow in your lives. I'm not suggesting you have to buy it because it's very lengthy and it's, you know, but essentially he mentions that when you start creating, you pushing your limits a little bit with a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult or worthwhile, you're going to get into a flow. And he says that happiness is also a flow. It's a state of optimal experience. So joy, creativity, but being totally involved in what the problem, totally involved, and the problem seems to disappear. And there's this exhilarating feeling of self-transcendence and control. And it's very interesting because he shows different, you know, how with work, but also sports, essentially, how you can get into the flow. And I've mentioned it once already, but, you know, he shares this analogy of tennis, of, you know, being a little bit pushing yourself and learning and getting the flow. So he says that there's two pitfalls, and he says that flow can be engineered, right? Because often we find ourselves in flow, we're completely transported and it's like hours and we realize, but he says flow can be engineered. And so this is the way. So first there's two pitfalls, is apathy. So when you're bored, when things are too easy or not meaningful. But the other one is anxiety. And it's being when things are too hard or unclear. So if you avoid those two already, then you can go and start creating flow. And he says that flow is when you really have, when you chose and clearly defined your goals. And we're going to go into that because we discussed about, you know, where do you want to be in your next career? And that's important to have a goal, because if we don't have a goal, we're not getting anywhere. It's like going in a cab and not knowing, you know, which direction to give. The second is finding ways to measure your progress. And that's important because if you can measure your progress, then you will see it, how it makes you feel good and you want to continue, right? If you don't measure your progress, then it's an experience that's once in a while and you can't find ways to repeat it.
Hello?
Paula.
Donna?
Yeah, I'm in a.
So sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye.
So again, finding ways to measure it, measuring progress, and having clear feedback. The third one is learning to concentrate fully on a task. I think we're all adults at this point, you know, we should be able to do that, at least some ways, but also develop the skills you need to make progress. And that's important because in the job career, when you're looking for a next step, you might be looking for a bigger job. And there are little things that you can do and learn to go to that next step. And if you start, you know, developing those skills, it makes it easier to want to go to that next step. And the one thing that he adds is keep raising the stakes. And that's very important because that's how flow works. So same as tennis, you know, you learn to tap over the net. And then at one point you learn to do, you know, a backhand or whatnot. And you stay and you push yourself a little bit to the next level. So that's how flow is engineered. Now, the thing is, I realized that I gave you all these advice, but I didn't give you a way to do a 3-year, 1-year, or 3 months goal. And I took this exercise because a couple of years ago, I think when Lululemon started opening their stores, I had noticed next to the cash register that they had a wall with all these vision goals. And Lululemon in 2010 gave a vision sheet to all their employees and said, put down your vision. And it was one for career, one for health, and one for personal. And it was a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, and a 1-year goal. And basically, I put it 3 years just because there's coronavirus and we don't know what 10 years look like. But if you want to put 10 years, please be my guest. If you have big aspirations or you can have vision. But I think already putting 3 years, 1 year, and 3 months goal is already, it's good to start, because if you have goals that are too far away, it can be challenging. So, and I copied their text is, what would you dare to do if you could not fail? Describe what you see, hear, and feel in your ideal life. And basically, you describe where you want to be in 3 years, and then you cut down and you create a smaller goal for the 1 year based on that, right? And a smaller goal in 3 months. And that's how you get to your 10-year goal or your 3-year goal. And they said, you use affirmative language of what you want. You use present time and measurable, and have a deadline. So that's very important, is saying, okay, in 3 years, I want to have a career strategy school, right? That would be very cool in 3 years. So by 2023, I would love, a physical, virtual career strategy school. So how do you get there? Well, in 1 year, I would have to have at least 100 students, right? Already enrolled before we can make something more sustainable. By, so in month 1, maybe I need to start creating an Excel sheet with the list of the people who are coming to the Zoom call and start, implementing the steps. So, and the way to do it is not in 3 years, I will have a thing, is in 3 years, I have. So that's one thing that, basically they say the brain doesn't see the difference between, what is reality or what is your dream. So you have to put in present tense. So I've created a little career strategy vision goal. And that's one of the documents that Charlotte's going to put on the chat room. But this is one thing that we can do together. And I put you'll see SMART. So be specific, make measurable. I want to have, 100 students by 2021, something like that. And the second page is, I thought that, to break it down, and this is what we're going to do in the collectives, is to create a little planner. Because I realized, I said, oh, you have to have a 1-pager, you have to have your resume and LinkedIn planned. I created the Excel planning your job sheet and what you're learning, but that's, all thrown at once, and maybe it can feel a bit overwhelming to start, and in which area. So that's what we're going to do in the collectives together. On the first week, everybody's going to have that 1-pager with their hard skill and their soft skills, and they can, go through it, and we can compare. Where at least I want you to have a folder on your computer. We're going to do it. We're going to have a shared folder for the people who are in the collective, but everybody should have a folder on their computer with an updated resume, with a, strategy planner sheet filled, and, vision goal, and your Excel on how to find your next job. What are the contacts we discussed? What are the companies? That's all the things we discussed a few weeks ago. So that's what we're going to do. And, we're going to fill it together. And there's a little, at the end of each line, you'll see there's a check-in. And so that triggered the accountability. And I received a newsletter from a yoga teacher, and he was saying that he had a hard time writing I don't know if he's writing a book or course, and he was procrastinating forever, and he needed people to help him be accountable. And what he devised is that he needed a person every day to call him saying, hey, did you write, I don't know, the 1 page or the 10 pages you're supposed to write today? And so what he did is he thought it was too much for one person. So he called 7 friends, and he asked them that one of each was, had one day of the week and had to call him on a Monday, on a Tuesday. You had John on a Monday, Sophie on Tuesday, Sarah on Wednesday, and they all call him and say, hey, did you do your 10 pages or your 1 page or whatever? So that's going to be very important. And this is why I research accountability. And I want you to think of people who can help you be accountable for those dreams and those goals you want to be. Because too often, and maybe it's only me, but you'll find excuses, right? The kids, the time, the weather, whatnot will happen. And what I want you to think is, if you have somebody that is there for you, it helps tremendously. So the challenge between accountability is creating accountability for in others versus holding others accountable. And this was an article in Inc. magazine. And it was really interesting because what they mentioned is that there was really a big difference between the two, and the organization that are good at accountability, the difference between those who are good at it and not good at it is the way they approach it. And if you start punishing people, that's where it's a struggle, right? So how do you get accountable when it's a positive and you are feeling that it's a mutually beneficial relationship? So first, they have to be simple and easy process. Maybe it's one phone call, or just, can you send me an email, on Monday morning to get me going or to remind me. I do that with Charlotte. She's like, she's my accountability person, but I might need more people. And I'm just, 1 second. So sorry about that. I just had one thing. So the one thing is making it very simple and easy to follow, having realistic goals and a deadline. So it's easy if you tell them, I want 100 students by 2021, and I need 10 students every month, and make it for the person easy to connect with you. Be transparent about your resource. If you only have 1 hour a week, you can't have launch a book, or how much time you have, etc. Having a way you can keep track of progress for both. But the biggest thing is the emotional commitment. And that's where, if the person trusts you, or if you trust the person, it will be much more easier. So you don't feel it's a bad cop entering, or mom or dad going, hey, have you done this? Or did you do this? If not, this is what's going on. And some people do that. And if that's, if that's the way you like to do it, having somebody, step on your fingers or slap your fingers. I read in one of the articles that one of the coach had his, people who coach him pay a penalty fee that he would give to a charity each time they didn't do something. So it cost them money, right? So that's one way of doing it. If that's your way where you need to be, slapped on the fingers, go for it. But the idea is that if you have that trust, then it's not somebody who's just, nagging you. It's really somebody who you're inviting to participate in your contract, right? So thanks to that person, I will be able to set up my school. Thanks to that person, I'm inviting that person to help me reach my goal. So it's almost like, allowing that person to be part of the adventure. If you want to run a 5K, it's allowing that person to have, give you the smile you're going to have, the happiness for your achieving your goals, and inviting that person to bring back. And again, if feedback is two ways, like I know, for example, that I don't get coached very well if you tell me, go for it, you can't do that, etc. I like, reassurance. I'm like, okay, you're doing great. Can you do a little bit more? And I'm like, okay, I'll come do a little bit more. But that's, one way. Some people are better in saying, more the army style, where you get shout out. So accountability is very important. And that's why I want in, that previous slide that we go into the check-in and that we put a name for each week. It may be the same person, or maybe it could be a different person per week. So the second thing I want to share is this famous Framingham heart study. So there are two researchers, so Krista Kiss and Fowler, who ran a study for 32 years. They started in the 70s, and I think they ended up in 2001 or 2. And the research says that if a friend becomes obese, you have 45% more likelihood to gain weight over the next 2 to 4 years. Do you imagine that? Now, if a friend of a friend becomes obese, it goes down to 20% of you, the likelihood of you gaining weight. But if a friend of a friend of a friend gets obese, you still have 10% chance of gaining weight. And they did the study, and it's the same for smoking. So if your friends in your immediate circle are smoking, most likelihood you are going to be smoking, and etc. So this was after translated by many coaches by the famous, you are the average of the 5 people you most associate with. I don't know if you've heard that from different coaches, but they always tell you that you are, the sum of the 5 people around you. And often, you realize that, some of your friends are great for talking about different things, but you don't necessarily have friends you talk about careers. A few of you might have some, but, not necessarily. Now, the good news is that it's reversible, meaning that this study, the opposite is also true. So if your friends are happier, it's a little less, because if your friends is happier, you have a 10% chance, but if your friend of a friend is happy, then it's a 6% chance, but it's still 6%, right? And so if your friends are happy, most likely you're going to be a happier person. And we could imagine that if your friends make more money because they're getting better jobs, that will trickle down also, that you will, get higher chances of networking and things like that. So the first thing, it's good news because it's reversible. But the second thing, the good news, is you can expand your network, right? So the 5 immediate people, those people, maybe you don't change them, but the friends of the friends, you can change them, and you can add people to your network. And that's where it becomes really interesting, because you can accumulate that information. So it came to another book called Friend of a Friend. And I think it's a guy named Buzuk or Vuzuk. Anyway, I'll send you the link in the email. So he wrote a book called Friend of a Friend, and he studied the networking issues. And he said there's a difference between strong social ties and weak social ties. And I'm going to go into that. So strong social ties are people that you see very often, you know them, you can send them a quick email, you have a very easy, comfortable relationship with them. The weak social ties are people that are more called acquaintance, right? There are people that you've known or you met through work, or maybe you speak once a year to them. And what they found is, these 2 studies that I put there because I thought it was really interesting, is one is that this student at Harvard, and I think it was in the 70s, but nevertheless, said that they surveyed people making job transition and found that 83% of those who were successful in their search had managed it with the help of weak social ties. The reason is because the people in your close circles, you most likely have all the same information. So you already have access to that same information. So if you want to have access to new information, you need to stretch and go a little bit outside of those current social ties you have, the strong ones, right? And the second study was also interesting because what they found out is that out of the 700 startups they studied, almost all the startups that had developed their business ideas from almost all the time had developed their business ideas from talking with weak social ties, had more innovative business models than those who relied on strong ties. So basically, it's great to have a network, but you need to diversify your network, because that's when you get new ideas. That's when you get new perspective. That's when you hear about a job offer that nobody else in your circle heard of. So it's, you know, the beauty of networking and the beauty of this idea that, you know, your friends of a friends get happier, they get better jobs, it will trickle down to you. But the idea is that really those weak social ties, so friends of a friend, or even going completely blank into a new network is very interesting. Everybody's good right now? Yeah? I have thumbs up? Yeah? Okay. So this goes into, he makes a stance, and I haven't, you know, gone into so much into detail because I don't want to overwhelm you, but he says that basically there's homogeneity and diversity. So the saying is that, you know, birds of a feather flock together, right? We tend to go, and when we go into business networks, right? When you go to a network meeting or event, you will tend to go towards people who are similar to you. And so people tend to go where things are safe, where people feel, you know, like it's easy, that they won't feel awkward. And especially if you're an introvert, it's even, you know, more the tendency. And I want to share, because I went to this big event in, I think it was in December. It's Professor G. It was at NYU. He's an NYU teacher. And there was this event, there was at least, I want to say 1,000 people in the room, right? And at the end, I was like, okay, I really have to network. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to go say hi. And at one point, this woman, actually, we must have seen each other. And so she came to me and I came to her. We were kind of a similar age. Guess what? She was also a fashion recruiter. Now, this was an event that was in business. You know, he's a teacher. He does M&A. He does tech. Nothing to do. Most likely, she and I were the only fashion recruiters in the whole room. But we got to get together and like, oh, hi. And, you know, we talked for a while. It was great. But, you know, it's not the point of networking. So, so in networking events, you tend to go towards the people who are similar to you. And so the idea of networking is it's best when you go in new and diverse group, because all of a sudden you have access to a whole pool. And maybe some of you, if you're young, you don't, you got your network from school and then maybe from work, but there's a moment where life plateaus, right? But then you have kids and maybe you put your kids to school and then you have all of a sudden all the network of moms from school or dads from school. And you realize at which point how you have a breath of fresh air, if so to speak, from a whole different network. And you all of a sudden have access to that different network. So being able to be with people that are like-minded is great, is safe, and it's great. But being also in new and different groups is important. And so maybe the good news for the introverts is that actually social events are not the way to go, because people actually bond more easily through shared activities. And that's the book was saying that's really the way to network. If you want to network, you have to do things with people. And it's funny because I was invited by a client to a cooking class, and basically he was inviting guests and we were all supposed to do a cooking class together, and that was March, 23rd, so that got canceled. But it was this idea, obviously, that we would actually bond more with a shared experience. And so what I want you to know is that the collective is basically, the collective groups, it's actually basically that. We all have common elements, right? Whether it's arts or whether it's retail or whether it's being a designer or whether it's wanting to change career, but at the same time, we're very different people that you might not have known otherwise. So the conclusion is, I would say the more diverse your network, the richer your opportunities are. And I know that some of you are actively looking. Some of you are looking for in 1 year or in 2 years, what would be next. But I would encourage you to look at who you're speaking and nurture your weaker social ties, because it's actually there where you might have a little bit more innovation or hear about the opportunity that you wouldn't have with your current position. So I'm gonna move my, that's another slide for next next time. So I don't know if this, oh, somebody was needed to be admitted. So I hope this was all helpful. But I thought it was really quite fascinating because it's not naturally, where we go. But I think there's a lot of information there. And what I want is, and we're doing that in the collective, but, put yourself a goal sheet and find somebody in your network that you can hold accountable. Say, okay, I have to do my LinkedIn. They don't need to even look at your LinkedIn. They just need to call you, say, hey, can you have it done? If not, you have to take me for a coffee. Well, maybe not a coffee today, but virtual coffee. Give them a little incentive to do so. And again, the networking is joining, it can be our collective, but it can be other groups. You can also join, a group, a virtual group. There's plenty of virtual groups, but make it not too big so that you can really interact with each other. I'm going to let you open any questions. If you have any questions. No questions?
If you'd like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, that would help.
Hi, I have a question. Hello, everyone.
Hi, who is it?
My name is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Yes, I've seen you. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's the first time I've spoken in the group. My background is in large-scale live events. I've worked in arts and culture, film festivals, and that sort of thing. I went back to graduate school recently and completed a master's in creative leadership from SCAD. And so right when COVID kind of changed the landscape is when I was getting back in the workforce, going back to working, again, film festivals on the West Coast and that sort of thing. I am in a position where I was going to begin to fund, to further what I was doing in graduate school, to fund to further that and to self-fund it through my work with in that field. And I tell you all of that because I wanted to ask a question. I actually started using some of my weaker connections. And I reached out to someone who is connected to an executive director of a large nonprofit and also on a board of trustees for another larger foundation. I reached out to him in reference to the concept that I'm launching and I'm working on getting some seed money for. But I also noticed after the fact that they have a role that might be suitable for me.
Nice.
It's awkward to transition that conversation that I started in one direction, and I haven't really had the conversation right now. We just emailed each other about setting up a time to talk. Or do I just keep it in the direction of where I initially reached out to him about?
Kelly, first, congratulations, because I think you're doing, going back to grad school is fantastic, and, and pivoting and trying a new project is also fantastic. And I think there's going to be a lot of new ideas in the world of event. I was speaking to somebody who's doing a bit similar to your job this morning, and between the physicality and the virtual on how to manage that. I would go with your conversation first, because this is where you're going to be able to display all your passion. When you have a personal project, it's where you can show the most passion, right? Because you're putting all your energy into it. So that's great for somebody who is interested in recruiting. And I think if they see, the diligence and your thought process in your project, they might be impressed and say, look, we might be looking for somebody, would you be interested? I wouldn't be surprised that actually they approach you. And if they don't, would you be able to do your project at the same time as that job, or no?
Well, yeah. So, yes, where I am with that project, yes, because I'm just basically doing a lot of research and working on kind of getting it started. in terms of, I am burnt out. When I've been doing events for 20 years.
Mhm.
So I am kind of,
Yeah.
there's a lot about it that I really still enjoy and comes naturally to me. And I've had tremendous experiences from working in that industry, but
It's exhausting.
yeah, and that's why I went back to graduate school 2 years ago, was because I wanted to pivot. And so, you know, this was, I thought, an opportunity, but I still need to earn money, so.
Yeah. I think, look, you can also, if you see that the conversation, if they're not sharing, but you could say, look, this is a very early stage project. I just saw that you have an opportunity. You know, I would love to be considered. And, you know, even incorporate my project into, because you could even develop the project for the company, you know, or incorporate. So go with your project and let them, you know, let's see if they come back with that conversation. And if they don't, you can be, you know, transparent, say, hey, you have an amazing opportunity that I would love to be considered for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I wasn't sure how to
fingers
navigate
crossed
that.
for you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Agathe.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, so nice to see you and everyone. Thank you. I love the idea of developing contacts in other areas, or, you know, where I have several areas of interest where my skills can be applied. How would you suggest approaching new contacts in these other areas, or as you call them, you know, your lesser developed contacts or areas? I feel a little unsure how to make those connections or present myself in these other areas to broaden my exposure and to develop some of these interests. I feel like I have many ideas. I want to focus them and, you know, be more, you know, edit my directions so that I'm not dividing my efforts in 5 ways. I'm maybe dividing them in 2 or 3 ways, but I have a lot of different ideas, and yet there are many areas where I could benefit, several areas rather than many, several areas where I could benefit from broadening my scope and my networking. How would you suggest?
So I think, well, you know, I don't know specifically your case, but I think, for example, right now there's a big push in tech, right? Whether you're in fashion or whether you're arts, there's a lot of new companies and startups developing, you know, things that are completely virtual. So I think if you can find in fashion some companies that are pushing towards that, and I can think of one called Replica. I can think of another one called Huritech. So these are companies that are developing tools for the fashion industry. So Replica, I think it's selling for salespeople to have access directly to merchandising. Huritech is a AI that scans all the Instagrams to help companies see, you know, if their bag has been on how many Instagrams and where about in the world. So, you know, so these people, these companies could have people who have fashion backgrounds. So, you know, already looking at some of the of their LinkedIn posts. And, you know, in the document I sent, you know, last week on the Excel document, look at a list of people that you want to nurture. Just, you know, you can put 10 people that could be your social, your weaker links, right? And see if, and, you know, in the resource page, well, that's in the collective, but so have a list of 2-3 newsletters you like, right? And maybe once a week you think, oh, this is an article that's on fashion and tech that was interesting. And you can send it to those contacts, say, hey, you know, I saw this article, thought of you, wanted to know how you were doing, you know, or just, you know, wanted to take news after the COVID. I know that, you know, it's a difficult or challenging time for everybody. Just want to, you know, if you have a minute, and, you know, share an article that you can discuss together that could be a bridge between the two of you, or, you know, liking one of their LinkedIns. But it's, you know, or finding so you see that, I don't know if Kimberly's on the call, I didn't see, but so, you know, she sent me a video on how to look good from YouTube on how to look good on Zoom calls, right? So like that was one way of saying, hey, I know you're doing Zoom call. I know it's not easy. You might have not, but these are tips that I found that I thought useful. I think in the sharing is one way to connect with WinkerLink, or saying, hey, I just saw that, you know, your industry's starting new things. What are your thoughts on it? And, you know, or I had a good contact with you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a way of reaching out, but still bringing it home to my interests or what my goals or intentions might be, but a first line of communication of sharing and bridging the interests between what they're doing and what I'm interested in.
Yes, I mean, I think today it's difficult to do these shared activities together because, you know, we're all confined in our own homes. But one way is, you know, to say, hey, this is a shared article. This is, so, and also I think in the interest of generosity of saying, you know, because you're going to want to nurture a relationship, and it's really not, do you have a job for me right now? Because they might not know, but just bringing them your name back to their memory. And that's why, you know, commenting on because the likes you don't see, the likes on LinkedIn, but if you see a comment, then the person usually gets an email reminder in their email box. Yeah. So that's a huge, you know, and as I mentioned in one of the previous talks, is, you know, the idea that you have to have 3 points of contacts with one person in a month so that they know you, you know, your name. But it's also could be, you know, an old school network, right? It's a school reunion, or going back on Facebook and saying, oh, you know, just, you know, saw that picture, how you doing?
So within my field, I've been doing that. You know, I feel very comfortable within my area of experience. It's reaching out, and it's really what you're saying is applying the same strategy to, you know, as I want to branch out into other areas or pivot into other areas.
Yeah, and it also can be, you know, what you're sharing on LinkedIn, because one of the ways, and I know that I'm the first to be guilty, is I don't find the time, or, you know, I'm not very good at sharing articles, but, you know, if you see that an article that is very, that resonates with what you want to be doing next, then publishing that article or posting that article on your LinkedIn will also associate people with that. You know, maybe it's like, oh my God, you know, this is what's happening in the fashion tech industry. So people are like associating Donna with fashion tech, you know, that not that you've been, but what you read and you project is what people see of you. They don't have no idea that, you know, it's not really your field. But
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Agathe, hi, I have a question.
Hi.
Hello. You said a couple of sessions ago that when we're networking, the worst thing to say is, I like to pick your brains.
Yes.
With. So when you're introduced to a contact that you don't know well, is it okay to lead with, I'd love to learn about your work, or I'm interested in your company? I find it really difficult to get specific with people I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, I have the same question, and I've twisted many times, and I've tried many different things. In one way, one thing, the one thing that does not fail is people love to talk about themselves, right? We all know that. Solange puts a thumbs up, but, you know, like, oh, tell me about yourself. It's the one thing. So I always say, you know, when people tell me about their work, because usually they come to tell me about their work, is, you know, say, well, which part do you really like? Which part excites you? Which part of your, you know, of the arts is really, where do you see the arts going in the future? What has it been, you know, what is it doing for, I mean, I don't want to say what is it doing for you, but in a way, how is it exciting? Where do you find, you know, newness in your job? Or you can say, you've been doing the same position or you've been at the same company for 15 years. How are you still excited? Or how is the company, nurturing you in your development. Anyway, just, what I mean is the question is allow the person to talk more about themselves. Mm-hmm. And first that creates trust because you're going to be listening to them. And, that's a little bit of a trick is when you listen actively to people, they're always feel that trust. But also they'll give you information about the behind the scenes of their company, the behind the scenes of their work. And, then you start having a conversation and you can say, oh, I'm really intrigued. I've always been fascinated by the company. Is it inside the way I perceive it out from the outside or things like that?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Adange.
It's interesting Alix asked that because thanks to all your encouragement, Agathe,
yeah,
I tend to not be the queen of networking at all. I find it actually really intimidating. And I've been wanting to connect with this guy who's a very well-known retail speaker, Doug Stevens. And, I've never managed before. And this time he wrote this article about calling Walmart employees heroes and basically concluding that they're not heroes, they just need a job and you should pay them better, by the way. And it spoke exactly to what I'm working on, which is basically, looking after front store retail staff, paying them better, educating better. So as we say in French, j'ai pris mon courage à deux mains. Mm-hmm. And I connected through LinkedIn, which I never thought he was even going to respond. And I started by saying, I just read the article you posted on Walmart. It's really great. I found it super interesting, as well as some of your other articles, and I've been following you for a while. Would you have 5 minutes to talk? I'd love to get your feedback on a project I'm working on. And he actually answered and gave me an hour of his time on a Zoom a week later. So
congratulations.
I know.
So that's amazing. And I just saw one of the comment from Kelly, and Kelly says, look at their LinkedIn profile. And you're absolutely right. There's so much information. There is so much information on the LinkedIn profile. And I had the same thing as you, Solange. The book is right here, is a woman in San Francisco who wrote a book about work and HR, etc. And she was French, but she lived 30 years in San Francisco. And I emailed her and I just said, merci, I love your book. Within 10 minutes, she had answered to me, oh, would be happy to talk with you. And I'm like, really? I didn't even.
And it's exactly what you said when you opened the conversation. It's all about flattering them, telling them that what they do is super interesting. And to be honest, half of the 1 hour session was me, asking him how he got into it, and he didn't stop talking. So I did get what I wanted anyways, and now I'm connected with him, which is really what I wanted. But it is key. I mean, you're right. It's like in retail. The number one skill you need in retail is listening skills. Just get them talking, and then you'll get the information you need. So it's a very good point, Agathe. Thank you.
And I just want to add to that the thing is also that those people are interested in building their network too. So always think that most people want to have a fan base, and even they're trying to build a bigger network. So when they see somebody from a different field saying, like maybe from retail, he's in marketing too, right? He's selling his book or whatnot. But if you approach, I think, somebody in the arts field and, they see that your background is also in the arts, they might be very interested in, the polite thing is at least to say, hey, thank you very much. Would love to connect. And you can say it, make it short, 15 minutes. I cut off somebody. Did somebody want to ask?
I just wanted to chime in quickly with everything that I never spoke before, and now I'm speaking so much today, but everything that everyone was sharing a while ago speaks to another point that somebody told me. I was talking to the week before last, and they were saying, if there's someone you want to talk to that you've always wanted to have a conversation with, maybe your number one person on that list of 20 people that you want to reach out to, and they seem like you wouldn't be able to normally have that conversation. This is the time. People are responding to their DMs, you know, more than ever. And so now's the time to reach out to them through whatever avenue, whether it's social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, they are responding.
Yeah, and I would even add that, you know, sometimes it takes 1 or 2 emails or 3 emails to respond. You know, like everybody's super busy. You know, you have an email for work, an email for personal. You have, you know, chat rooms on Slack or this or that. So sometimes you can miss an email, and it's always worth, you know, sending a second. I think maybe my favorite case is Vincent, who never lets go of a thing. And, you know, he will text me until I get. And to tell you the truth, like in recruiting, there's plenty of people who send me their resume, and I try to respond to most people. But there's sometimes I don't, and it doesn't happen. And then there's always one person who will send me 1 resume, and every 3 months. And at one point I'm like, okay, I'm going to call him because we get over it. And, you know, and then I'll learn something really interesting, or I'm like, oh, actually I should have called him earlier. So that's one of the tricks too. And I want to say, you know, I just want to do this quick plug, and it's a plug for the collective. I really believe that if, and we're testing this right now, join one of the collectives that is there. There's one for designers, there's one for career pivot, and there's one for arts, culture, and retail. So 2 things. 1, you're not alone. These are small, safe groups where we actually do the work, and we're going to be accountable, and we're going to create. Second, if there's none of these groups interest you, we can create another group. It could be a group about, you know, maybe, you know, Kelly, you want to do a group about events, you know, or it could be a group about, no, she says no. Okay. But and we have people, but it could be a group about, you know, people who are in finance and are looking to connect with more people in finance, or people in HR. But, you know, this is a time where I will follow you in wherever you think of going. And the third thing I wanted to share is these collectives are subscription. So it's $80 a month, and it's for 4 calls. So it's basically $20 an hour, which I think is very reasonable, or at least I think. And you have a Slack channel, you have access to shared documents, you have accountability. What I'm going to say is, if for any reason you cannot afford it right now, email me, and we'll make it happen. Okay. It's not a condition that if it can't happen, I'd rather have you in a group, and, you know, and you find a job, and eventually you can join the group or the membership, or you don't need the group, and that's fine. But join the group if you can, and if you have those $80. But if it's a problem, please just email me, text me, and join, because I think it's the benefit is there.
It's actually very interesting what you told today about the secondary networks, because we tend to always stay in our own network and think that only people, for example, who work in retail are going to have the connections in retail. And the fact is, it tends to be actually totally the opposite. If I'm looking at, you know, Alix and I got talking, and suddenly I realized, well, hold on a second. I have people who are in the arts who are actually great friends of mine. And suddenly, because I'm thinking, okay, Alix is in the arts, what do I know about the arts? But you're right, it's really important that we actually realize that our networks are super rich. And this collective that you've created, Agathe, is amazing for that. Honestly, I mean, thank you so much, because
you guys are a part of it. I mean, you did the you know, Solange and Alix have a whole shared Excel sheet with all their favorite newsletter, all their favorite thing. I was like, this is like more than like, maybe you're the A-type students, but
I think you put 2 A-types together.
Definitely. Definitely PowerPoint
Sure.
presentation. I'm like,
We're
whoa.
it's so funny. Like we're
Yeah.
such perfectionists, the two of us. I mean,
But you see, Solange, this is what the beauty is I created the collective, right? Just the space. You
yeah.
brought in the information, you created the documents, and what happened is I shared that document that you shared on resources to the designers and creatives group and to the career pivot group. So your work benefited all these other groups, and now we have one model thing. And I think that's where it's really a collective, because I can't do all that work by myself.
Yeah, and it's what you said in the quote at the beginning, is that it's way better to do it together, and it's way more fun. Like when you're collaborating, I mean, and just for the 2 cents, it's actually Alix who created that fabulous document. I just go and put stuff in it.
That's fine. It takes two to tango anyway. And there was this fun little story that I read. And I just want to say that the collective for me, and working on your career right now and working on, finding your next job is super important, because when I shared with you the first series of, if you learn to interview, if you know your hard skills, you are already so ahead of the competition, because of 100 people I interview, 90 people at least don't know how to interview. They don't know how to present themselves. So all of the things you're doing right now is getting you ahead of the competition. It's giving you, not ahead, but it's giving you, a little booster. Because there was this when I was doing the reading for this week's Zoom, there's this little story about 2 explorers in Africa, right? They're in the savannah, and they're in Africa, and they're with their backpack. And then the 2 of them see a lion. And so one opens his backpack and takes his sneakers off and puts on his sneakers. And the other guy says, "Why are you putting on sneakers?" He says, "I'm going to need to run fast now." And he says, "You can't outrun the lion." And the guy said, no, I need to run faster than you, because you're going to get caught by the lion, right? So I'm just, and I was like, that's one way of saying it. It's really, but in a way, everything you're doing for your career is already a booster. You can't imagine, compared to most people. So, as a recruiter, this is really fundamentally why I'm doing this, because as a recruiter, it was very frustrating to have to meet somebody and start picking all from scratch. Okay, what are you doing? Who's your network? And as I told you, the people look at me like, can you get me a job? And the research from last week showed only 10% of jobs are taken from recruiters, right? So most likely it's through that network and through that secondary network that most of your jobs are happening. So I'm creating that space. Let's see if it's real, let's see if that can happen. And I think because it's so diverse, you all came, in a Zoom call, and now you're all connected offline too, which is amazing.
I have a question for you. I'm really enjoying, this is my second time participating, and it's been very, there's just a very vibrant energy here that I enjoy. My question is, when I'm looking at the collective, I'm in a place now that I have to pivot professionally. And during this time with the COVID, I've discovered that I really want to commit to being more creative. And so there are 2 collectives that interest me. How do I navigate that? Is it a matter of, having to join 2, or is there a place where there's a common ground between all 3?
So yes, first, you can join both if you have the time, and you can, and let me know if I just want people to commit for a month, because I think it's fair for other people, but you can join both, and you can send me a text if it's, too hefty. But I would say pivot if that's what you need to do. And you get into Slack, and in the Slack that we share a lot of documents. So there's plenty of shared information. And as I said, the whole Excel sheet from the arts, culture, and retail is going to be shared with the other groups. But also we were talking about, maybe they can do a presentation. I know Sophie, who's here, who is part of the Career Pivot, Sophie Lefebvre, who's on the screen too, is actually doing a 10-minute Slack presentation tomorrow, because the Career Pivot meets on Thursdays at noon. So if you want to join, you have a few hours, no pressure. But the Arts and Culture meets on Thursday at 6 p.m. But if she's really good, and I think would benefit a lot, I'm going to ask her to do a presentation to the Arts and Culture and Retail, because we all need to know Slack these days. I'm a novice and I've dabbled a little bit on it. And I'm also going to ask if, the creative and designers want to have a little course on Slack. So the idea is to really, it's not like you're abandoned if you're one and all the goodies are in the other one. We're really sharing all the goodies. And there's a general Slack channel where I have, that's as a recruiter, I've put together a group of experts, of people in the fashion industry, and we work together. We go and pitch companies together, and we share a lot of articles in there that you have complete access to. And, if anybody wants to see if that was useful, they see, there's actually, Monique, I'll tell you, there's actually sometimes too much information rather than not enough. So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Oh, and Monique wants to start a wellness network. And yes, Monique, where are you, Monique? Oh yeah, there you are. Yes, and yes, let's do it. Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Wellness, I know you had the spas, and we had one gentleman who was also owners of spa. I'm sure we have, some others that would be interested. Yeah, let's look at that. Great. So if nobody questioned, and did you find is this idea of where I'm sharing the video on the chat, is that easy for you or not? You can all unmute yourself and just, is that?
Which video?
The slides and the vision sheet. Is that easy?
That's good.
That works.
Yeah. And by the way, Agathe, nice new blouse. You've been shopping.
That's the famous one I talked about last week.
I thought so.
And I can confess that I've been using to all my Zoom meetings this week. So I'll be in a t-shirt and all of a sudden I have an important Zoom meeting and I'm like, okay, blues of the week.
Tomorrow night you can't use it because we've already seen it. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm going to make an effort. For you.
But it's very cute and it looks very good on you.
Thank you.
Agree.
Okay, so Kelly and Sylvia are not able to download the goals and accountability. So,
Agathe, about tomorrow, what were you? Because Alix and I were wondering for the collective tomorrow night. Are you wanting to have a time for Sophie to come and talk at the collective? Is that what you meant?
Well, first I have to ask Sophie, which I didn't. So I'm gonna have to ask her.
Sophie.
Yeah. Then I also want the gentleman who has long hair and is called Alice, and is not Alice, it's Cédric, who is also in the arts world. And I would love for him to join the arts, culture and retail. No pressure, Cédric, but I think.
When is it? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Okay, I'm gonna write it down.
Did you mean, Agathe, for us to schedule a time at the beginning? Because as you know, Alix and I are very square, so we time everything to make sure that we have enough.
We can put it next week. Don't worry, we can put it.
No, it's fine. If you tell us, we were just.
You have to ask Sophie. Is it okay for tomorrow or no?
We can do it next week. We can chat about it too.
Yeah. At what time is it tomorrow?
It's at 6 p.m. So it's 3 p.m. for you.
No, I won't be able to make it, unfortunately.
And you know what we can do, Sophie? We can even if you're okay, and we can take this offline, but I can record the 10-minute portion of the Slack, and and we can play that video.
And we can present it.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
If not, you know what? I'll have learned what she said, and we'll copy.
And you'll present, actually.
Yeah, I'll show you how. Okay.
I have a question, I think. So I think I'll find a way to join. Hi. I think I'll find a way to join you because it's good. And I think I'm realizing as well that in the future, I'll need to understand some more about negotiating contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be something that I have to explore through a bunch of different channels as well. But I think it might have crossover in terms of like a negotiating salary, but then just understanding, just something about this, because I feel like it's one part it's self-confidence, one part it's understanding the market. It's also one part about understanding how to communicate what you want, and then also understanding what in general people are doing. So then I feel like there's a kind of fuzzy area in my brain here, so maybe it would be helpful.
Yeah, negotiating is always tricky. I negotiated all today with a client we've been belly dancing, I call it, for a few months. And, he's pushing and I'm pushing back. And it's all about self-worth and, where you put your boundaries. So, yeah, I can try. I have one guy that actually created a whole app on negotiation, and he's a professor at Barnard, I think. So I can reach out to him and see if maybe we can invite him for for one of the next Barnard negotiation. I'm going to put that. And so next week, what I thought would be interesting is to invite 3 people that I know to discuss that all had careers as entrepreneurs and in the corporate world. Some were entrepreneurs and joined the corporate world, and some were in the corporate world and became entrepreneur. And I thought it would be an interesting conversation to see how they went from one to the other, because there's often this idea that you're either an entrepreneur or you're either a corporate person. I think we all have to be a little bit of entrepreneurs, or nowadays you have to be a bit of an entrepreneur. So I think does that resonate? If anybody says no, I have a thumbs up from Monique. I have 2 thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So I'm going to try to put a little panel. So it won't be me, but I'll try to have a nice blouse anyway, but we will try to put 2 or 3 people. And I'm going to try to ask the questions. But I think it would be good to have that, so it doesn't feel like you have to be in one category or the other. And maybe, how they pivoted would be a great story also. What was the pain point in transitioning? So that's maybe for next week. And if you have any subject, like Amber, negotiating, I'm going to reach out to this guy and see if he could be doing a presentation. But if you have any specific subject that you want, yes, Monique?
I would love to have a presentation on LinkedIn profiles.
Yes.
I kind of am in the same boat where I got to the point where I was very comfortable in my corporate position, my dream job actually. And so I thought it would be a great time to be a little bit more rounded on my LinkedIn profile, speaking a little bit more about the less traditional wellness modalities.
Yep.
Now I'm kind of wondering if I need to go back to a more corporate structure as I'm navigating this career pivot.
Yep. Very good. And I'm going to look, because LinkedIn is doing a lot of new things, and we discussed, and I think in the vision I put on week 4 learning, but I think it should be maybe the little 2-minute video. Because one of the formats I also would like to do is, I think one Wednesday, in an ideal world, I would have, 10 or maybe 15 people, and I interview you live. Because what is challenging is to talk about yourself, but maybe we prepare, I look at your resume and I do a very short interview, and you can respond. And so you get to know each other, all of you. Because again, that's what Solange was saying, is, oh, I know some people in arts that could benefit, you know, the same way I know somebody in the spa industry, you know, maybe that's somebody you would want to meet. And I think today, and also in the Slack, there's this app, and I know some of you asked me, called Donut, and it's creating virtual coffees. I haven't figured it out. I just thought it was cool, and I put it on the Slack, but I have to figure it out. So Charlotte, if we can look at Donut on Slack on how that works, but it's going to create virtual coffees. It's an app that creates virtual coffee. So it will randomly put you together and say, hey, do you guys want to have, you know, a 15-minute coffee or chat this week? And it will find a time in your agendas or something like that. So I think it's the moment, you know, because you never know. This is where the diversity of the network is very important. You know, really make sure that, and in fashion, it's very challenging because there's this echo chamber, like we all speak the same people. And, you know, it started with like, oh, it's Anna Wintour and all the editors and all the PR. So it became this very, you know, cliquey relationship. So you need some, you know, fresh air. And I think it's all about inclusion today. There's no velvet rope anywhere now, except to go to the supermarket. So, you know, that's the irony. But that's where, you know, we are all in, well, we're mostly in the Northeast area, but we have some on the West Coast, some up in Canada. So this is the moment to really, you know, expand and extend your network. And let me know if you have my Calendly. I'm happy to talk to any of you if it's, you know, there's more challenging questions or things you don't want to ask here.
I love the idea of the 10-minute interviews to the group, because it would satisfy on so many levels. It would help you have a safe space to experiment with presenting yourself. And also you can learn a lot from listening to other people.
Yes.
You know, in the same concept of group therapy, you know, like when you hear somebody else making the mistake, then or saying something, and then you, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, no, it truly, if you were in my position and you saw how people interview, you would have learned in 12 seconds how to interview, because it's just, you know, it's easier to see the mistakes in others than often in us. But when you see somebody rambling and you're like, come on already yet, you know, then you're like, okay, get to the point. When you see somebody doing a great example, then you copy that. You know, it's like monkey see, monkey do. Like kids learn like that. We learn all like that. We see somebody doing something great. I'm like, okay, that's how they did it. So that's also the purpose of the collective, is we are together and they're like, oh, okay, you know, that's a great, you know, great network sheet that they put together. Let's share that, you know, and just apply it. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. And I would love to get to know you all, but also, you know, this is a platform. Let's do that until, you know, the clubs reopen or the restaurants reopen.
Or even after they've reopened. I'm going to miss you guys. I'm not going to.
No, I'll be there. So long as it might be just you and me, but we'll be there.
No, I think Sophie will continue coming, and Laetitia and Alix and Monique.
Okay. Yeah.
By the way, Monique, I'll be on your wellness collective.
Oh yes, of course, because Solange
will be there in our yoga pants, right?
Yeah, but also you have experience with wellness and.
But probably nothing compared to Monique, which is why I'm interested.
There we go. Boom. And I think wellness is going to be a very hot topic. So thank you, Monique, because I don't know why we didn't even think about it before. But it's going to be a very, very important subject in the coming month.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the articles coming out from the luxury industry are basically saying it's going to be pivoting towards experiential wellness and looking after yourself, etc. So you're dead on, Monique. Let's do it. And
especially for the mental health, we're gonna have to
yeah. And Laetitia says it'll be difficult to join. Yeah, we want to join all of them, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Agathe, I don't know. You got something going there. The Pandora box is open.
I know. And Monique, you have to understand that the way the collectives work is that each collective has are led by two co-hosts. So it's not me doing the work. I'm just creating the container. It's the two co-hosts that give the information, give the direction, say, let's guys, we're going there. Oh, and our intern, Elio, is back on camera. And as you see, same haircut as Dad. Very cute. So that's where, you know, it's interesting because you can really take it from where you want to go. Okay. Well, I'm very happy to see you all. And again, thank you. Thank you again for all the support and your ideas and your smiles. And, you know, Kelly's talking now, and Monique created a collective, and Donna's trying to join. So, and Amber has questions. So that's what it is. It's, so thank you all.